Chapter 19. The chariot race ends with a bang. We arrived in Long Island just after Clarice, thanks to the Centaur's travel powers. I rode on Chiron's back, but we didn't talk much, especially not about Kronos. I knew it had been difficult for Kronos to tell me, and Chiron to tell me. I didn't want to push him with more questions. I mean, I met plenty of evil, embarrassing parents, but Kronos, the evil Titan Lord who wanted to destroy Western civilization, not the kind of dad you invite to school for career day. When we got to camp, the Centaurs was anxious to meet Dionysus. They'd heard we threw some really wild parties, but they were disappointed. The wine god was in no mood to celebrate as the whole camp gathered at the top of Half Blood Hill. The camp had been through a hard 2 weeks. The arts and crafts cabin had burned to the ground from an attack by a Draco Ionius, which as near as I could figure was Latin for the really big lizard with breath that blows stuff up. The big house's rooms were overflowing with wounded. The kids in the Apollo cabin, who were best healers, had been working overtime to perform first aid. Everybody looked weary and battered as we crowded around Talia's tree. The moment Clarice draped the golden fleece over the lowest bough, the moonlight seeped into Brighton, turning from gray to liquid silver. A cool breeze rustled in the branches and rippled through the grass. All the way into the valley, everything came into sharper focus. The glow of the fireflies down in the woods, the smell of strawberry fields, the sound of the waves on the beach. Gradually, the needles on the pine tree started turning from brown to green. Everyone cheered. It was happening slowly, but there could be no doubt. The fleece's magic was seeping into the tree, filling it with new power and expelling the poison. Chiron ordered 24/7 guard duty on the hilltop. At least he could find an appropriate monster to protect the fleece. He said he'd place an ad in Olympus Weekly right away. In the meantime, Clarice was carried to her cabin. Mate's shoulders down the amphitheater, where she was honored with a laurel wreath and a lot of celebrating around the campfire. Nobody gave Annabeth and me a second look. It was as if we had never left. In a way, I guess that was the best thank you anybody could give us, because if they admitted we'd snuck out of camp to do the quest, they'd have to expel us. And really, I didn't want more attention. It felt good to be just one of the campers for once. Later that night, as we were roasting marshmallows and listening to the Stoll brothers tell us a ghost story about an evil king who was eaten alive by demonic breakfast pastries, Clarice shoved me from behind and whispered in my ear, "Just because you were cool one time, Jackson, don't think you're off the hook with Ares. I'm still waiting for the right opportunity to pulverize you." I gave her a grudging smile. "What?" she demanded. "Nothing," I said. "Just good to be home." The next morning, after the party ponies headed back to Florida, Chiron made a surprise announcement. The chariot races would go ahead as scheduled. We'd all figured they were history now that Tantalus was gone, but completing them did feel like the right thing to do, especially now that Chiron was back and the camp was safe. Tyson wasn't too keen on the idea of getting back in a chariot after our first experience, but he was happy to let me team him up with Annabeth. I would drive, Annabeth would defend, and Tyson would act as our pit crew. While I worked with the horses, Tyson fixed up Athena's chariot and added a whole bunch of special modification. We spent the next 2 days training like crazy. Annabeth and I agreed that if we won, the prize of no chores for the rest of the month would be split between our 2 cabins. We spent the next 2 days training like crazy. Since Athena had more campers, they would get most of the time off, which was fine by me. I didn't care about the prize. I just wanted to win. The night before the race, I stayed at the stables. I was talking to our horses, giving them one final brushing, and somebody right behind me said, "Fine animals, horses. Wish I'd thought of them." A middle-aged guy in a postal carrier outfit was leaning against a stable door. He was slim, with curly black hair underneath his white pith helmet, and he had a mailbag slung over his shoulder. "Hermes?" I stammered. "Hello, Percy. Didn't recognize me without my jogging clothes?" I wasn't sure whether I was supposed to kneel or buy stamps from him or what. Then it occurred to me why he must be here. "Oh, listen, Lord Hermes, about Luke." The god arched his eyebrows. Um, we, we saw him all right, I said, "but you weren't able to talk sense into him?" "Well, we kind of tried to kill each other in a duel to the death." "I see. You tried the diplomatic approach." "I'm really sorry. I mean, you gave us those awesome gifts and everything, and I know you wanted Luke to come back, but he's turned bad. Really bad. He feels like you abandoned him. I waited for Hermes to get angry. I figured he would turn me into a hamster or something, and I did not want to spend any more time as a rodent." Instead, he just sighed. "Do you ever feel your father abandoned you, Percy?" "Oh, man." I wanted to say, "Only a few hundred times a day." I hadn't spoken to Poseidon since last summer. I'd never even been to his underwater palace. And then there was the whole thing with Tyson. No warning, no explanation. Just boom, you have a brother. You'd think that deserved a little heads up phone call or something. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I realized I did want recognition for the quest I completed, but not from the other campers. I wanted my dad to say something, to notice me. Hermes adjusted the mailbag on his shoulder. "Percy, the hardest part about being a god is that you must often act indirectly, especially when it comes to your own children. If we were to intervene every time our children had a problem, well, that would only create more problems and more resentment. But I believe that if you gave it some thought, you will see that Poseidon has been paying attention to you. He has answered your prayers." I can only hope that someday Luke may realize the same about me. Whether you feel like you succeeded or not, you reminded Luke of who he was. You spoke to him. I tried to kill him. Hermes shrugged. Families are messy. Immortal families are eternally messy. Sometimes the best we can do is remind each other that we're related, for better or for worse, and try to keep the maiming and killing to a minimum. It didn't sound like much of a perfect recipe for the perfect family. Then again, if I thought about my quest, I realized maybe Hermie was right. Poseidon had sent the hippocampi to help us. He'd given me powers over the sea that I'd never known about before. And there was Tyson. Had Poseidon brought us together on purpose? How many times has Tyson saved my life this summer? In the distance, the conch horn sounded, signaling curfew. You should get to bed, Hermes said. I've helped you get into quite enough trouble this summer already. I really only came to make this delivery. A delivery? I am the messenger of the gods, Percy. He took an electronic signature pad from his mailbag and handed it to me. Sign there, please. I picked up the stylus before I realized it was entwined with a pair of tiny green snakes. Ah! I dropped the pad. Ouch, said George. Really, Percy, Martha scolded. Would you want to be dropped on the floor of a horse stable? Oh, sorry. I didn't much like touching snakes, but I picked up the stylus, pad and the stylus again. Martha and George wriggled under my fingers, forming a kind of pencil grip like the ones my special ed teacher made me use in second grade. Did you bring me a rat? George asked. No, I said. We didn't find any. What about a guinea pig? George! Martha chided. Don't tease the boy. I signed my name and gave the pad back to Hermes. In exchange, he handed me a sea blue envelope. My fingers trembled. Even before I opened it, I could tell it was from my father. I could sense his power in the cool blue paper, as if the envelope itself had been folded out of an ocean wave. Good luck tomorrow, Hermes said. Fine team of horses you have there. Though if you'll excuse me, I root for the Hermes cabin. And don't be just too discouraged when you read it, dear, Martha told me. He does have your best interests at heart. What do you mean? I asked. Don't mind her, George said. And next time, remember, sneaks work for tips. Enough, you two, Hermes said. Goodbye, Percy. For now. Small white wings sprouted from his pith helmet. He began to glow, and I knew enough about the gods to avert my eyes before he revealed his true divine form. With a brilliant white flash, he was gone. I was alone, and I was alone with the horses. I stared at the blue envelope in my hands. It was addressed in strong but elegant handwriting that I'd seen once before, on a package Poseidon had sent me last summer. Percy Jackson, C.O., Camp Half-Blood, Farm Road 3141, Long Island, New York, 11954. An actual letter from my father. Maybe he would tell me I'd done a good job getting the fleece. He'd explain about Tyson, or apologize about not talking to me sooner. There were so many things I wanted that letter to say. I opened the envelope and unfolded the paper. Two simple words were printed in the middle of the page. Brace yourself. The next morning, everybody was buzzing about the chariot race. but they kept glancing nervously toward the sky like they expected to see Stymphalian birds gathering. None did. It was a beautiful summer day with blue sky and plenty of sunshine. The camp had started to look the way it should look. The meadows were green and lush. The white columns gleamed on the Greek buildings. The dryads played happily in the woods. And I was miserable. I'd been lying awake all night, thinking about Poseidon's warning. Brace yourself. I mean, he goes to the trouble of writing a letter, and he writes 2 words. Martha the snake had told me not to feel disappointed. Maybe Poseidon had a reason for being so vague. Maybe he didn't know what he was warning me about. He sensed something big was about to happen. Something that could completely knock me off my feet unless I was prepared. It was hard, but I tried to turn my thoughts to the race. As Annabeth and I drove onto the track, I couldn't help admiring the work Tyson had done on the Athena chariot. The carriage was gleamed and with bronze reinforcements. The wheels were realigned with magical suspension, so he glided along with hardly a bump. The rigging for the horses was so perfectly balanced that the team turned at the slightest tug of the reins. Tyson had also made us 2 javelins, each with 3 buttons on the shaft. The first button primed the javelin to explode on impact, releasing razor wire that would tangle and shred an opponent's wheels. The second button produced a blunt, but still very painful, bronze spearhead designed to knock the driver out of his carriage. The third button brought up a grappling hook that could be used to lock onto an enemy's chariot or push it away. I figured we were in pretty good shape for the race, but Tyson still warned me to be careful. The other chariot teams had plenty of tricks up their togas. Here, he said, just before the race began. He handed me a wristwatch. There wasn't anything special about it, just a white and silver clock face, a black leather strap. But as soon as I realized that this is what I'd been him tinkering on all summer. I didn't usually like to wear watches. Who cared what time it was? But I couldn't say no to Tyson. Thanks, man. I put it on and found it was surprisingly light and comfortable. I could hardly tell I was wearing it. Didn't finish in time for the trip, Tyson mumbled. Sorry. Sorry. Hey, man, no big deal. If you need protection in race, he advised, hit the button. Ah, okay. I didn't see how keeping time was going to help a whole lot, but I was touched that Tyson was concerned. I promised him I'd remember the watch. And hey, Tyson? He looked at me. I wanted to say, well, I tried to figure out how to apologize for getting embarrassed about him for the quest, but for telling everyone he wasn't my real brother. It wasn't easy to find the words. I know what you will tell me, Tyson said, looking ashamed. Poseidon did care for me after all. Well, he sent you to help me, just what I asked for. I blinked. You asked Poseidon for me? For a friend, Tyson said, twisting the shirt in his hands. Young cyclopes grow up alone on the streets, learn to make things out of scraps, learn to survive. But that's so cruel. He shook his head earnestly. Makes us appreciate blessings, not be greedy and mean and fat like Polyphemus. But I got scared. Monsters chase you so much, clawed me sometimes. Scars on your back? A tear welled in his eye. Sphinx on 72nd Street, big bully. I prayed to Daddy for help. Soon the people at Merryweather found me. Met you. Biggest blessing ever. Sorry I said Poseidon was mean. He sent me a brother. I stared at the watch that Tyson had made me. Percy! Annabeth called. Come on! Chiron was at the finish line, ready to blow the conch. Tyson, I said. Go, Tyson said. You will win. Yeah, okay, big guy. We'll win this one for you. I climbed on board the chariot, got into position as Chiron blew the starting signal. The horses knew what to do. We shot down the track so fast I would have fallen out if my arms weren't wrapped in the leather reins. Annabeth held on tight onto the rail. The wheels glided beautifully. We took the first turn of a full chariot length ahead of Clarice, who was busy trying to fight off a javelin attack from the Stoll brothers in a Hermes chariot. We've got him, I yelled, but I spoke too soon. Incoming! Annabeth yelled. She threw her first javelin in grappling hook mode, knocking away a lead-weighted net that would have entangled us both. Apollo's chariot had come up on our flank. Before Annabeth could rearm herself, the Apollo warrior threw a javelin into our right wheel. The javelin shattered, but not before snapping some of our spokes. Our chariot lurched and wobbled. I was sure the wheel would collapse altogether, but we somehow kept going. I urged the horses to keep up the speed. We were now neck and neck with Apollo. Hephaestus was coming up close behind. Ares and Hermes were falling behind, riding side by side as Clarice went sword on javelin with Connor Stoll. If we took one more hit to our wheel, I knew we would capsize. You're mine! The driver from Apollo yelled. He was a first-year camper. I didn't remember his name, but he sure was confident. Yeah, right. Annabeth yelled back. She picked up her second javelin, a real risk considering we still had one full lap to go. And threw it at the Apollo driver. Her aim was perfect. The javelin grew a heavy spear point just as it caught the driver in the chest, knocking him against his teammate and sending them both toppling out of their chariot in a backward somersault. The horses felt the reins go slack and went crazy, riding straight for the crowd. Campers scrambled for cover as the horses leaped the corner of the stands and the golden chariot flipped over. The horses galloped back to their stable, dragging the upside-down chariot behind them. I held our own chariot together through the second turn, despite the groaning of the right wheel. We passed the starting line and thundered into our final lap. The axle creaked and moaned. The wobbling wheel was making us lose speed, even though the horses were responding to my every command, running like a well-oiled machine. The Hephaestus team was still gaining. Beckendorf grinned as he pressed a button on his command console. The steel cable shot out of the front of his mechanical horses, wrapping around our back rail. Our chariot was shuddered as Beckendorf's winch system started working, pulling us backwards while Beckendorf pulled himself forward. Annabeth cursed and drew her knife. She hacked at the cables, but they were too thick. Can't cut them, she yelled. The Hephaestus chariot was now dangerously close. The horses were about to trample us underfoot. Switch with me, I told Annabeth. Take the reins. But trust me. She pulled herself to the front and grabbed the reins. I turned, trying hard to keep my footing, and uncapped the riptide. I slashed it, and the cable snapped like kite string. We lurched forward, but Beckendorf's driver just swung his chariot to our left and pulled up next to us. Beckendorf drew his sword. He slashed at Annabeth, and I parried the blade away. We were coming up on the last turn. We'd never make it. I needed to disable the Hephaestus chariot and get out of the way, but I had to protect Annabeth too. Just because Beckendorf was a nice guy didn't mean he wouldn't send us both to the infirmary if we let our guard down. We were neck and neck now, Clarice coming up from behind, making up for lost time. See ya, Percy, Beckendorf yelled. Here's a little parting gift. He threw a leather pouch into our chariot. It stuck to the floor immediately and began billowing green smoke. Great fire! Annabeth yelled. I cursed. I heard stories about what Greek fire could do. I figured we had maybe 10 seconds before it exploded. Get rid of it, Annabeth yelled. Annabeth shouted, but I couldn't. Hephaestus's chariot was still alongside. Waiting until the last second to make sure that little present grew up. Beckendorf was keeping me busy with his sword. Beckendorf was keeping me busy with his sword. If I let my guard down long enough to deal with the Greek fire, Annabeth would get sliced and we'd crash anyway. I tried to kick the leather pouch away with my foot, but I couldn't. It was stuck fast. Then I remembered the watch. I didn't know how I could help, but I managed to punch the stopwatch button. Instantly the watch changed. Expanded, the metal rim spiraling outwards like an old-fashioned camera shutter. A leather strap wrapping around my forearm until I was holding a round war shield a meter wide. The inside soft leather, the outside a polished bronze engraved with designs I didn't have time to examine. All I knew, Tyson came through. I raised the shield and Beckendorf's sword clanged against it. His blade shattered. What? He shouted. How? He didn't have time to say more because I knocked him in the chest with my new shield and sent him flying out of his chariot, tumbling in the dirt. I was about to use Riptide to slash at the driver when Annabeth yelled, Percy! The Greek fire was shooting sparks. I shoved the tip of my sword under the leather pouch and flipped it up like a spatula. The firebomb dislodged and flew into the Hephaestus chariot at the driver's feet. He yelped. In a split second, the driver made the right choice. He dived out of the chariot, which careened away and exploded in green flames. The metal horses seemed to short circuit. They turned and dragged the burning wreckage back towards Clarice and the Stoll brothers, who had to swerve to avoid it. Annabeth pulled the reins for the last turn. I held on, made sure we would sure we, but somehow she brought us through the and spurred the horses across the finish line, and the crowd roared. Once the chariot stopped, our friends mobbed us. They started chanting our names, but Annabeth yelled over the noise, "Hold up! Listen! It wasn't just us!" The crowd didn't want to be quiet, but Annabeth made herself heard. We couldn't have done it without somebody else. We couldn't have won this race or got the fleece or saved Grover or anything. We owed our lives to Tyson, Percy's brother, I said, loud enough for everybody to hear. Tyson, my baby brother. Tyson blushed. The crowd cheered. The Annabeth planted a kiss on my cheek. The roaring got a lot louder after that. The entire Athena cabin lifted me and Annabeth and Tyson onto their shoulders and carried us towards the winner's platform where Chiron was waiting to bestow the laurel wreaths.